Picture the ideal 1950s American dining room. The family is gathered, the holiday roast is being carved, and the table is set with gleaming, perfectly polished silverware. Look closely at that fork. There's a high probability it was stamped with the name Oneida, and the origin of that specific brand of silverware involves a 19th century religious commune that practiced highly regulated free love. In the mid-1800s, the United States was swept by intense religious revivals. Thousands of Americans, disillusioned by the rapidly industrializing world, withdrew from society to build highly experimental, isolated communities aimed at total spiritual salvation. One particular group attempted to completely eradicate human sin and selfishness. By trying to engineer a perfect society, they inadvertently created an industrial empire that would mass-produce the ultimate symbol of conventional domestic life. The architect of this experiment was John Humphrey Noyes, a charismatic Yale theology student who aggressively rejected traditional Calvinist teachings. Noyes developed a radical theology called Perfectionism. He preached that Christ's second coming had already occurred in the year 70 CE. Because of this, Noyes argued, humans did not need to wait for the afterlife. They were entirely capable of living entirely without sin right now. Testing this theory required a controlled environment. In 1848, Noyes led a small group of devoted followers to a plot of land near Oneida Creek in upstate New York to build a sinless society from scratch. Over the next 3 decades, the commune constructed the Oneida Community mansion house. This massive 93,000-square-foot brick complex replaced their early wooden structures and served as a single communal home for over 300 members. Building a massive house was the easy part. To guarantee his followers remained entirely free in sin, Noyes engineered a system to dictate every single aspect of their physical, emotional, and psychological reality. Noyes diagnosed human selfishness as the root of all sin. To him, the most dangerous expression of that selfishness was the exclusivity and possessiveness found in traditional monogamous marriage. His solution was a doctrine he called complex marriage. In the Oneida community, every adult man was considered married to every adult woman. Exclusive romantic love was strictly forbidden, and sexual partners were constantly rotated to prevent anyone from forming a private bond. The community managed intimacy through a central committee. Older members arranged sexual encounters, and if a couple began showing signs of special attachment, the leadership would forcefully separate them, sometimes sending one partner to a distant branch of the commune. To enforce compliance, Noyes implemented mutual criticism. This was a mandatory practice where a committee, or sometimes the entire commune, publicly and meticulously dissected their personal flaws, bad habits, and perceived selfish traits. Members submitted to these grueling public evaluations to cure themselves of sin. In practice, the intense social pressure created an environment of total psychological surveillance, ensuring utter loyalty to Noyes. Keeping 300 people fed, housed, and isolated from the outside world required hard currency. Their early farming attempts failed, forcing them to find a more reliable income. Early industrial revenue came from small factories manufacturing rugged steel animal traps and silk thread. But look at the expanded timeline. Their financial trajectory explodes when they open a Wallingford, Connecticut branch, mass-producing silver-plated flatware. The daily reality of the commune was now defined by the deafening roar of drop forges, toxic chemical plating baths, and the intense, repetitive labor required to stamp out delicate, ornate spoons. A radical religious sect that had spent 30 years aggressively trying to destroy the institution of marriage was now funding its survival by manufacturing the most popular wedding gift in America. By the late 1870s, the internal structure was fracturing. Noyes was aging and losing his hearing. A new generation of children born into the commune grew up exhausted by the constant surveillance and began demanding the right to marry in traditional monogamous pairs. Simultaneously, local clergy and politicians mounted a fierce public campaign against the group's sexual practices. In June 1879, Noyes received a tip that New York was preparing a warrant for his arrest on charges of statutory rape. Rather than face a jury, Noyes fled the mansion house in the middle of the night. He crossed the border into Canada, permanently abandoning the sprawling utopian empire he had built. He left behind a community strictly bound by his personal authority. Within days of his departure, the ideological glue dissolved, and the followers voted to officially abolish the practice of complex marriage. The religious experiment was over. But the residents realized while their theology had collapsed, their factories were printing money. In 1881, the former commune members drafted an agreement to divide and reorganize. They legally dissolved their communist society, distributed shares based on years of labor, and formally incorporated as Oneida Community Limited. Throughout the 20th century, the newly secular company launched aggressive, highly polished advertising campaigns. They deliberately scrubbed away their scandalous origins, positioning Oneida Flatware as the pinnacle of respectable dining, eventually growing into the largest silverware manufacturer in the world. A group that had originally pooled all their property to destroy capitalism had transformed into a massive joint-stock corporation. A sect that viewed romantic love as a sin had built their fortunes selling the dream of the perfect nuclear family. John Humphrey Noyes set out to engineer a society of flawless, sinless humans. He failed completely. But in the process, his followers built the industrial machinery that would mass-produce the American dream.